a motion was made in closed session to come back into open session, so we'll continue with our Board of Elections meeting. Next item on the agenda is the certification of the Green Party. I believe we have Mr. Oliver Hall, counsel to the Green Party, who wishes to make a brief 5-minute statement. Mr. Hall, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the chair and to the board members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board this morning. We don't have much in the way of an affirmative presentation. We think that the facts are clear. The state board through the county boards has presently validated over 15,000, almost 16,000 signatures on the North Carolina Green Party petitions. That is well over the 13,000 some signature requirement, and we believe that the petitions therefore should be validated without further ado. As the board knows, it's imperative for the Green Party's ability to nominate and place its candidates on the ballot in the 2022 general election that process take place today. The deadline for the party to certify its nominees and for the nominees to submit their application for a change in registration so that they will be qualified to be nominated by the Green Party is July 1st, which is tomorrow. And so we believe that this certification, the validation process and the certification of the petitions should go ahead forthwith. And if there is any concern by any board member as to why that should not take place, I am happy to address those concerns now.
Mr. Hall, thank you for your time here this morning. We appreciate your statement, and we will proceed. Next is I'm going to recognize staff for a brief presentation on the proposed recognition of the North Carolina Green Party. Thanks, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me get my PowerPoint up and make sure that you're able to see it properly. Mr. Chair, are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation in full screen?
I certainly am.
Okay. So what I'd like to do this morning is to give a brief overview of how the petition process works in North Carolina for a party to be considered recognized in our state, and then go into more detail about where we are in the petition process for the North Carolina Green Party. Our general counsel will also go over some information after I go through these first few slides. One of the things I think is important to note is how this process even takes place and what the statutory requirements are for the county boards of elections and the state board of elections and how we adhere to those. For a party to be recognized in our state, there are three possible ways for that to occur. The first is for a group's candidate for governor or for the presidential electors to receive at least 2% of the entire votes cast in the last preceding general state election. They can request to be recognized by petition, which is signed by registered and qualified voters in this state, equal to 0.25% of the total vote of registered voters who voted in the most recent general election for governor. In that particular scenario, those petitioning must also obtain at least 200 voter signatures from each of 3 North Carolina congressional districts. And then there's another option where a party could have a candidate nominated on the general election ballot of at least 70% of the states in the prior presidential election. The Green Party came before us through the petition process at this point. The process to be recognized is to initiate, which is submitting a petition request form to the State Board of Election, and then that group goes about gathering signatures. They obtained signatures, as I mentioned, of 200 registered voters from each of the 3 congressional districts, or at least 3 congressional districts. We talked about the percentage that's required. So at this given point, that means that it's at least 13,865 signatures of registered voters. And then the required heading of our petition sheet. So here is what we provide to those seeking to petition. This is a blank signature page, and by statute, at the top of a signature page, it must say, petition to create a new political party. It cites the statute. The undersigned qualified registered voters, they list the county of these voters. Hereby petition for the formation of a new political party to be named. They submit the name, and we make sure that that does not conflict with any existing party's name, and whose state chairman is, that's listed, and the address of that individual is listed, and their telephone number must be listed. You'll also note that our petition sheet clearly states General Statute 163-221, which says it is illegal to sign the name of another person to petition. And then the required information for a signator is provided in each of the columns. So it's that an individual must print their name, residential street address, zip code, date of birth, signature, and then the date when they signed. There is a column for the County Board of Elections and the State Board of Elections to use to process each of these signatures. Currently, we have deadlines in order to qualify for the 2022 general election. The party submits their sheets to the county boards of elections in that county where the signatures were obtained, and that had to be done by 5 p.m. on May 17th, 2022. I will note for the board that that happens to have been when we had our primary, just for note. The secondary from the deadline is just the fact that what the county board does is they return those check sheets along with certification to the petitioner, because the next deadline is for the petitioner or the party to submit the checked signature sheets and certifications to the state board by noon on June 1st, 2022 was the deadline this year. The other instructions that are given to those seeking recognition by petition is that they must be checked by the individual county board of elections. They must be submitted to the county board of elections, and they may do that all along to assess the number of accepted signatures throughout their gathering process. It's not just on the date of the deadline. The signatures must be original. We do indicate that ink should be used and that electronic signatures cannot be accepted, nor photocopies. And then no one should sign a petition on behalf of another person. So when the county boards receive these sheets, they follow General Statute 163-96, specifically item A. And that is that they must complete the verification within 2 weeks of the date submitted. They use our SEAMS petition module. That's not outlined in the general statute, but we wanted you to know that there is a designated module within our state election information management system, SEAMS, where they are able to process those, and that also allows the state board to monitor and conduct audits through the module. The county boards are instructed through that general statute to examine the names and the signatures. It requires that the signatures on the petition be checked against the registration records. It does say in that statute that the county boards are to confirm that the voter listed is qualified and registered in the county. And then they generate the report or the certificate as indicated that provides the number of credited and discredited signatures for the petitioner to then submit to the state board by the deadline. At the state board, we have undergone a review of the Green Party's petition, and we have found, as I mentioned, so here are some key numbers. The 13,865 is what is required, and within that, there must be 200 signatures in 3 congressional districts. The Green Party submitted 22,521 that have been submitted across the county boards of elections. 15,953 have been validated by the county boards and are under review by the state board. At this point, we have indication that they have met the 200 signatures in the 3 congressional districts part. So where we are is validated signatures over a minimum requirement is at 2,088. As I mentioned, the state board conducts a review and audit. And so where we are at this point is that starting in early May, we were notified by several county boards of elections of irregularities that they were finding during the review of petition. And so we opened an investigation, and our staff here in Raleigh at the state board have been reviewing every signature sheet that has been received by the county boards of elections that we have received. And then the sheets, there are sheets that have been turned in as late as this week that we are continuing to review. Some of the things that we have noticed in our review and now investigation. There are numerous pages that have obvious signs of fraud or irregularities. These include the same handwriting throughout and similar signatures. There are numerous lines with incomplete information or where the name, address, or date of birth are crossed out. The petition sheets have partial dates of birth in some cases. We're finding duplicate voters. And some of these sheets include the names and initials of the petitioner who gathered the signatures. So that's been part of our investigative process, is looking at that. The other issues that have been raised or revealed are that there are deceased or long removed voters that were included. What this seems to indicate to us is the submission of signature sheets from when the Green Party had a petition effort prior to 2018. We're also seeing signature sheets that identify a long ago chair for the party, also indicating prior petition efforts. So with these things in concern, we have these concerns. We also know that the Green Party or the potential candidate for the Green Party have utilized consulting firms or consultants to gather signatures. One firm collected around 100 signatures. Another firm collected more than 1,000 signatures. 3 individuals hired by contract collected just shy of 1,500 signatures, yet only 624 of those were accepted. So where we are now is that the investigation staff and our state board staff are continuing to review. In their individual situation, it might not raise a question, but when you look at these cumulatively, we feel like there is a cloud over how many signatures are valid. Do we need to go back to the county boards of elections to question that? Do we need to have conversations with these signature gatherers? There's just a lot of concern around what we are finding and the amount of irregularities and possible fraud that has been identified already within the signature pages that we have received. Here's an example. As I mentioned, some of the gatherers indicated their name or initials at the top of a page. This particular sheet was, the X's mean that Wake County did not accept these signatures. They found the information to have the same handwriting and the signatures appear to be the same. Similarly, we've had some questions raised about whether a voter was actually the one who signed. Our investigators have spoken with Shanika Bell, and we have found that she does not recall signing. There is a discrepancy with the signature and an issue with the spelling of her name. So then we have also received some outside complaints after we opened up the investigation, and those include that 145 signatories seeking to revoke their signatures, 3 signatories claiming they did not sign, and the staff investigators have separately identified a handful of people whose signatures were counted but who said they never signed. We've had 19 signatories claiming the Green Party never informed them of the general purpose and intent of the new party, which is required by statute. And we have allegations of apparent fraudulent signatures and signatures validated after the deadline. Again, these are things that have come recently. We already began our investigation based upon irregularities and concerns that were raised by the county boards of elections in early May. With this information, we wanted to bring to your attention our recommendation. We know that there are a number of known questionable signatures, and it does appear to exceed the 2,088 signature threshold. We would request further investigation, including subject interviews that we have not been able to do for various reasons. And then we would ask the board or recommend to the board that they table consideration to certify the Green Party to a future date. Before you take this up, Mr. Chair, I would ask that I'm going to turn it over to General Counsel Love. I will advance the slides, but she has some further information that we need to provide you from a legal standpoint.
That's fine. Go ahead, Ms. Love.
Thank you. So we did want to share with you the possible criminal penalties that could be involved with individuals who may have engaged in fraudulent activity. And the applicable statutes are 163-221A2. And that statute makes it a Class 2 misdemeanor for any person to sign the name of another person to any petition under GS 163-96 for the formulation of a new political party. And that statute also provides that any name signed on a petition in violation of that section shall be void. Additionally, under 163-275 subsection 4, it is a Class I felony for any person knowingly to swear falsely with respect to any matter pertaining to any primary or election. And next slide. And finally, we did want to highlight for the board some areas where we are considering providing recommendations to the legislature and also to the state board about how law changes could be made in the future to help prevent this situation from happening again. So first of all, we are intending to request a legislative change that would make it illegal to pay per signature that someone is collecting when they go out and ask people to sign their petition, whether that would be a petition for the creation of a new political party or to get on the ballot as an unaffiliated candidate or any other type of petition. It is already a crime to pay per voter registration form collected or to pay per absentee request form that is collected, but it is not currently a crime to offer a payment to the gatherer based on how many signatures they obtain. And so that change would help to de-incentivize people from creating fraudulent entries on those petitions. Additionally, we intend to propose rules about petitions to help provide additional information to the boards of elections when they are conducting their review. And that would include proposed rules to require that each petition page identify the person who is gathering the signatures and to disclose the contact information for that individual. And as you saw when Executive Director Brenton Bell showed the sample signature pages, you could see that a person had listed some of their first name and a last initial on there, and that helped investigators to identify who was collecting those signatures, and that is something that we think is necessary going forward, and we would like to make that a requirement, as we know that some other states already do. Thank you.
Thank you, General Counsel Love. Board members, are there any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Eggers.
Mr. Chairman, I know the staff recommendation is to allow some additional time for them to investigate whether there's a substantial number or a number of signatures that would potentially mean the threshold has not been met. I'm mindful of various deadlines that would be in this case. One being our printing deadline for the board, but also staff can speak to Mr. Hall's point that apparently there is a deadline for them to submit nominees by July 1st. How would that deadline be impacted if this board tables this discussion to a date certain?
Ms. Brinson-Bell, do you want to speak to the printing deadline, and then perhaps Ms. Love would work on the other more legal issue?
Just as I would have liked it, Mr. Chair. Yes, we are due to send out absentee by mail ballots on September the 9th. And so we will be underway with ballot preparations mid-August. This will allow for the completion of the second primary and to have those candidates indicated on the ballots. So mid-August is when we would be doing ballot preparations in order to meet the September 9th absentee by mail deadline.
So from an administrative standpoint, just to clarify, there's no administrative hurdles that would require us to do anything today administratively. We would have basically till mid-August in order to make sure we get our ballots printed and proofed and all the pre-election stuff we need to do there. Is that correct?
From an administration standpoint, that's correct.
Great. Ms. Love, to Mr. Ager's second question.
Certainly. So the state board does not have a deadline set in statute for when it has to make a determination about recognition of a new political party. 163-96A2 is the relevant statute, and it provides that once the state board receives all of the certifications and petition materials that the county boards have provided to the petitioner, then the State Board of Elections shall forthwith determine the sufficiency of petitions filed with it and shall immediately communicate its determination to the state chair of the proposed new political party. And state board staff have been working on this extremely hard. We have had staff helping with this when it's not their assigned area, working lots of extra hours to meet that forthwith language in the statute to get this done as quickly as possible. And, due to all of the issues that have very recently come to our attention in the investigation, that is why the request is being made to ask for additional time to review these. But as Executive Director Brinson-Bell stated, there would still be time to get any nominees of the party onto the ballots for the general election.
So just to make sure I'm correct, you're saying that there's not a July 1 deadline for example, if we do recognize the Green Party at our next meeting, that would not prohibit them from presenting their nominees after July 1 for the November ballot?
The new political party does have a deadline that is provided in 163-98, and that is following their nominating convention, which is the way that new political parties select their nominees for the ballot. They are to submit and certify those nominees to the state board no later than the first day of July prior to the general election. And in fact, that is why the state board is meeting today. That was to allow as much time as possible for review. And so that's what's provided in the statute is that July 1 date. But certainly, we don't have the information at this point to be able to make a decision on the sufficiency of the petitions.
I guess my concern is how do we table consideration of this if the practical effect is going to be to prevent the Green Party from having candidates that they wish to present?
So if there is no vote today, they are not, a decision has not been made on the ultimate certification for the party. So there may be other avenues for that deadline to be extended. But like I said, that is provided in the statute. So, it's not likely something that the board can simply, say we're going to change the date since it's in the statute.
Or the administrators, are you still have questions, or can I jump in here?
Mr. Chairman, that just, I think, puts us in a rather hard spot because that does give a hard deadline for the party. I've had previous discussions about tabling the party recognition. The discussion was administratively no harm or prejudice, but based on this statutory deadline we've been advised of, it appears that it makes it a harder question and that there is indeed prejudice to the Green Party.
Here's where I stand on the issue. One, I've been a long, firm believer that parties beyond the Democratic and Republican Party should have access to the ballot. And it is my hope that the Green Party, if it can meet all of its statutory requirements, would be on the ballot as well. But our job here at the state board is to get it right, not necessarily fast. I wouldn't be comfortable today certifying the Green Party's recognition. I would be more than amenable to taking this up at our very next meeting, giving staff the requisite time they need to do their work to give us the assurances that everything has been done on the up and up. But I can't today vote to certify this party. So my suggestion would be, we do this as soon as we can, which invariably is not going to be in the next 12 hours before July 1st. There is a bit of a challenge between those two statutes and the way this came about. And it's my hope that this board will have the opportunity to review this stuff. But I can't in good conscience say, well, they've met their requisite statutory obligations given all of the stuff that we've got going on with them. So that's where I would like to be today, but I understand your concern that we are in a bit of a pickle here.
And
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized, please?
Mr. Hall, we'll let us continue our deliberations, and if folks have conversations, we'll hold for just a second.
Mr. Chair, could I add one more piece to Mr. Egger's question?
Sure.
Thank you. Well, as I mentioned, the statute does not provide an option for the state board to extend that deadline. It may be possible for a court to determine that it would be impossible for the party to comply with that statutory deadline and therefore to allow them to submit after that time. And so I did want to mention that as something that could be possible.
Thank you. Other questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First of all, it seems to me that the Green Party, which I know little about, I don't know their ideology, their politics, or anything like that. 88 vote spread. And you're proposing that within 2 weeks or so, probably the staff could be able to find that 2,088 votes were fraudulent. I submit to you that if someone called me from the State Board of Elections and I had signed a petition and they said, this is the State Board of Elections, did you sign a petition so-and-so, so-and-so, it would scare a lot of people trying to check these signatures. I mean, I already know what I was signing or whatever, therefore the state board investigative crew could delete that name and probably bring them under their threshold of this 13,865. They've met it. You got a 2,000 signature spread. And then I had no idea why we have put all this urgency in verifying signatures and getting staff to ramp up in the 2020 presidential election. Excuse me for my Southern vernacular. We did not check nary a signature, means not one signature verified by a county board of elections with signatures on file. Not one. But yet this particular party, which Mark Elias, the Democrat lawyer that we all know that just got kicked out his congressional map and was reprimanded by the court, and is a Democrat lawyer, is now submitting letters to us about 3 people that did not sign a signature. So there must be something advantageous for the Democrat Party not having the Green Party on the ballot. That's my observation. As far as a legislative change, I would hope we could get a legislative change that would require in the 2022 election and the 2024 election that the law states plainly that if it's questionable, that they can check the signature, which once again, we did not check one in the 2020 election. So we want to have maximum integrity and honesty put forward in our election. So I don't understand why we don't certify this. You're taking away 45 days of campaigning for those candidates should they decide to run and be announced. You're requiring them to have a convention between now and August 15th, and all of a sudden it's not why the current signatures when we weren't concerned about it in the presidential election. So my vote will be to certify this today. Thank you, sir.
If I were asked to certify today, I could not in good conscience certify this. There's enough question, including a criminal investigation, into the signature petition gathering process. I will note that the statute requires us to verify these signatures when we're looking at petitions for new parties. I would like to, and I'm hopeful that we can get to the bottom of this, and it would be my desire, personal desire, to see this new party on the ballot. But given what's in front of us today, I can't in good conscience vote to certify today. So I would like to wait, give our staff enough time to go through this process. If there's a motion to vote on this today, I will be voting no.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yeah,
This is
Mr.
all.
Hall, let's make it brief though, please.
Well, thank you. Is there any question as to the validity of the 15,953 signatures that have been validated by state county boards of elections?
Mr. Hall, I don't want to get into the details of a criminal investigation, but I have questions sufficient in number to be not willing to vote for certification today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I asked the question because the board is effectively presuming that there is some question as to the validity of those signatures by delaying the certification and possibly rejecting the certification of the Green Party petitions. And if there is some presumption here that is operative, the presumption ought to be that validated signatures are valid, unless there is some basis for considering them invalid or at least subject to further investigation. So again, the question is there any basis for considering or questioning the validity of any one of those 15,953 validated signatures?
And I will thank you for your comments to the board. I will stand by my earlier assertion, and I will ask any other board members if they have questions.
Mr. Chairman, you have not answered the question. You are now
Mr. Hall, you're out of order, sir. Go ahead and mute Mr. Hall, please. I'll ask the board members if they have any other questions for staff.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Eggers.
Just a brief comment, if I may.